Good evening. A warm welcome to those attending and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Children, Families and Education Select Committee. My name is Councillor Heena Makwana and I'm the chair of this committee. Details of the business to be considered today is shown on the agenda, copies of which are available in the room and also accessible on YouTube underneath the broadcast. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch any mobile devices to silent before the meeting starts. And when you are invited to speak, please ensure you turn your microphones on so that you can be heard in the recording. For those watching via YouTube, if you are so minded, you can complete one of our resident feedback forms. These can be found in the information section underneath the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way that we run our meetings. Okay, so before we go through our agenda, I'd like to introduce colleagues in the room. So to my right, I have Councillors Smallwood, Bat and Ahmed Walana. To my left, I have Anisha Teji, Democratic Services Officer. Councillors Sweeting, Dot, Gill and our co-opted member, Mr. Tony Little. Officers joining us this evening are Jenny Chalmers, Ian Waters and Kat Wyatt. We also have members of our Hillingdon Youth Council, so a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoy our meeting. Also, Councillor Richard Mills is observing too, so a warm welcome to you all. A reminder that this is a public meeting, not a meeting held in public, so there are no speaking rights for those observing. Thank you. Okay, all right, agenda item 1, please. Apologies for absence, Anisha.
Apologies from Councillor Chamdal with Councillor Ahmed Walana substituting. Apologies also from Councillor Judge with Councillor Dot substituting. Okay,
thank you, Councillor Dot and Ahmed Walana for subbing today. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest in matters coming before this meeting. Do we have any? No, thank you very much. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Do we agree those minutes?
I'm not sure whether I need to declare an interest because the youth service involved. I work with the young offenders.
Okay.
Do I have to?
Thank you, Councillor Dot. Has this been previously declared on the register?
Yes.
Okay, then you don't need to, but I can make a note just for transparency.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sweeting, did you indicate as well?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Chair. There's no mention in the minutes. It's me again, isn't it? There's no mention in the minutes that we requested a witness session for our major review that would include representative or representatives from schools. We mention in the minutes that we are in discussion with schools, but we did think that schools play a vital part in this area and that we would like them to be represented in one of the witness sessions.
Okay, we'll make a note of that and add it to our witness session programme, I think. We'll have to explore that, Anisha. Is that right?
Thank you, Chairman. So we do have witness session 5, which will involve hearing from partners. So the theme will be partnership working and hearing from key partners. So if officers are able to secure the attendance of head teachers, then we can definitely try, but we'll have to confirm.
It won't need to be a head teacher. It could be a head of service or another teacher that would be able to provide their input in what we're doing as a council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we agree with the minutes? Yeah, great, thank you. Agenda item 4 is to confirm that the items of business marked as part 1 will be considered in public and that the items marked as part 2 will be considered in private. We do have a part 2 item this evening, so at the end of this main meeting we'll close and then we'll go on to our part 2. Agenda item 5 then is the budget proposals for services within the remit of Children, Families and Education Select Committee. I just want to remind members that any questions or comments after the officer presentation should be focused in the remit of this Select Committee, please. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Ian Waters. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, this is our second finance appearance of the year. So back in the summer, we came and briefed the committee on, I suppose, the emerging challenges and the economic position in which the council's budget would be set for the forthcoming year. At Cabinet in December, the Cabinet approved a set of budget proposals effectively to deliver a balanced budget for the new financial year. And as part of the consultation process, there's a public consultation ongoing at the moment on those budget proposals, and we also present the detail of the budget in the areas of the individual select committees to you as committees, so you can feed back to Cabinet those views which are captured in the budget report in February that Cabinet consider before making their final recommendations to Council. So that's my process bit done. So I can so yes. So I think the headlines of the budget that we're presenting this year is that they are exceptionally challenging economic circumstances. I think none of us will be none of us will not be aware of. We're seeing inflation tracking above 10% for the first time in a long time. That's impacting not only on the cost of council services themselves, but there's a cost of living impact in terms of feeding through to residents themselves as well there. We're also still dealing with some of the COVID-19 legacy in terms of how that's impacting on council services. And I think one of the ways which actually, including within the remit of this committee, that we're seeing those impacts is where it's impacting on other parts of the public sector as well, and therefore where we're working with partner organisations, we're seeing how that's impacting on demand for our own services. Really, just to put some of that into context for what that means, the savings requirement for the 23-24 financial year back in February, so when we set the last budget, we expected to be something of the order of £10 million. That figure has more than doubled, so we're looking at balancing a budget with sort of £20 million worth of measures. We have a worked up programme of savings which the Cabinet have outlined to bridge that gap. For the services within the remit of this committee, the savings are slightly more than £1 million looking to come out. I think given the nature of services overseen by this committee, I think it's worth bearing in mind that this is where we're seeing a lot of the demand coming through for services, and by the nature of sort of the commissioning arrangements, we also see a lot of the inflationary pressures. So when you look at the budgets for the committee, in 22-23 we were looking at something in the order of £52 million. Budget for next year, we're looking at £4 million uplift in those budgets to manage inflation, further £3 million for demand coming in, so that's both in terms of your looked after children's services, but also send transport. And then £1 million worth of savings. So overall, we're looking to be spending at £6 million, or around 12% more than we were a year earlier on the services within this committee. Really, just reflecting on how that demand feeds through, and ultimately the budgets we set will mirror those sort of demands on local services. I wasn't going to dwell on sort of running through the whole report, because I think you probably have other agenda items to cover as well this evening. But I thought I'm more than happy to sort of take questions on any particular aspects, any particular proposals within there, and would probably, if it's okay with you, Chair, to hand back to the committee.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Can I open it out to committee first? Okay, Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you very much, and thank you, officers, for providing us with a detailed information. I mean, it's been a very challenging year, and I'd like the thanks of this committee. I know the chair will as well. Thanks for providing such a detailed and interesting report. Just the general information. We haven't had the update, the financial update from central government yet, or have we? And was that good for us or not so good? And what about the schools budget? Was that good or not? That's sort of a general question. But my main question is concerning the areas under our remit. They're all very volatile areas. They're all demand-led areas. How can we be certain that we are going to be able to make the savings of over £1 million on those areas, seeing that they are the most volatile, and the report makes it clear that they are the most volatile? Are we going to manage it? And if not, what happens next? I mean, we've had to use our earmark funds in the past, but they are looking ever decreasing. Are we having to think about using those for our budget to square the circle?
Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of the settlement, the provisional local government finance settlement was released in December after we published the draft budget. there are a number of movements within the settlement, but broadly speaking, we're in a position that's consistent with where we thought we'd be on government funding. So I think we're quite comfortable with the budget that will be going up in February will be not too dissimilar in terms of the funding position, and certainly not materially dissimilar, if that's a way to put it. On the schools budget, we've included a brief update in terms of where we're up to in the process. But given the schools budget takes that slightly different route via the schools forum in terms of on its way to budget setting, I've not got sort of too much of the background, if that's the way to put it, to run through tonight. I think that might be something that's sort of better sort of through the forum discussions where sort of colleagues will be able to run through that in a bit more detail. And then I suppose on the third point then around these being sort of volatile demand-led areas, and really I suppose how do we have confidence that this is a savings programme we can deliver in that environment, and almost what's the contingency plan, I suppose, if for any reason those savings are more challenging than we expect. So I think I'd point to we've got sort of solid track record in these areas of including proposals in the budget that we have worked up firm proposals. So one of the critiques of a budget can be if it's based on those more sort of aspirational kind of we would like to take money out of this area, whereas I think hopefully the way we've presented the report demonstrates that these are quite granular proposals and they're quite specific measures. We've got clear kind of accountability in terms of how we look to deliver those, in terms of understanding who's working on what aspects of the savings delivery. And really, I think it comes back to sort of, if you look at sort of previous years, sort of we have a good track record of translating these into delivered savings. In the event that there were, whether it's slippage in the saving or we sort of identify an alternative proposal, as you suggest, that's what the reserves cover is there for, that we hold. Sort of clearly any organisation would love to have a bit more money in the savings account, if that's the way to put it, just because it gives you that bit of extra resilience. But certainly, if you look at our experience of the kind of pressures that we've been managing, we've certainly got the reserves cover going into the new financial year to manage that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Little.
Thank you. I've got two questions, one relating to schools and another one relating to fees and charges. In relation to the school funding, would it be possible to have a copy of the paper going to Schools Forum when it becomes available?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, what I'll do, I'll ask colleagues to sort of circulate that via Anisha and Democratic Services colleagues.
Thank you. And in relation to fees and charges, the increases that the council is making on a general basis seem to be very substantial.
Mr. Little, is that in relation to the remit of this select committee? Yes. Okay, that's fine.
And what I wanted to ask was, in relation to the fees and charges and services provided in this area, have we taken account of the impact of them on demand for those services, and have we altered the rebates that would be available for those who are on low incomes?
Yes, so in terms of fees and charges, it's maybe worth saying the fees and charges proposals that are in the budget for this year follow a sort of comprehensive benchmarking exercise we've undertaken, whereby actually when you look across the board at fees and charges income across outer London, we are consistently ranked at the very bottom of that league table in terms of so there's a question then about the balance of what we look to fund from general taxation and what we look to fund from those specific service users where it's appropriate, and where it's effectively set out in statute that's part of the funding mix that we're working with. I can confirm that we have considered the impacts that changes in fees and charges may have on demand, if that's the way to put it, in reaching the kind of the new estimates for income that are fed into the budget. Although clearly this is an area where there will be a level of volatility, there'll be an element that we will pick up in the year how that experience is going. I suppose, and in terms of concessionary rates, the kind of how we balance those charges between users and services, all proposals for charges have been worked up with the specific service areas fully in the loop. So this is not a sort of top-down sort of flexing of the budgets. We've looked at whether or not the charges and the differentiation between different kinds of charges, if that's the way to put it, within each service area, has been considered. And in most areas we do have some form of whether it's a concessionary charge or some sort of differentiation in the rates.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if it could be acknowledged that I think this is a good news budget in incredibly tough times and circumstances. And I just wondered how officers feel this compares to other councils in and around London in its comparison, because I certainly know, speaking to colleagues in opposition in other councils, that they're not in the good sound financial situation that we are in, and that some of the decisions that we are making to ensure that the budget is balanced and that our reserves are in a sustainably healthy position is important. But I just wondered, it would be interesting to hear how officers think, although they won't be able to see others' budgets yet, how this compares.
So I suppose I'd struggle to comment on, I suppose, other budget proposals, if that's the way the way to put it. But no, I think certainly reflecting on budgets that we've set in previous years as an authority, this is definitely a challenging budget cycle, and I think the work that's been done to balance the budget continues to be to our usual high standards, if I can phrase it that way. In terms of, so I think we've got a solid budget. It's certainly an achievable budget going into very, very challenging times.
Councillor Dott.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to ask what impact on improving educational outcomes will the reduction in the budget for central education services of 20% reduction proposed cause, seeing we have a low numbers of outstanding schools in the borough? Thank you.
So the only saving we've got in here that's coming directly out of spend on sort of SEND and education services is looking to step down the cost of the higher cost of transport, effectively where we're busing children out of Borough. So the savings in here, I'd like to say, would have, well, no, I think I can confidently say would not impact on educational standards, if I can put it that way. So what we've got elsewhere in the budget is we've got an uplift of, I want to say, circa 600,000. It is in the text somewhere, in the expected rise in the cost of out-of-borough placements, and therefore the transport costs that go with them. That 200k saving that we've got in there is the reflection that we expect, because of our delivery of new school places in Borough, we expect to only have to effectively transport those children to an in-borough location, and therefore it's less expensive. So I'm confident in saying that saving does not require any step down in education standards. It's about where we're taking the children to.
Thank you. Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the officer for the detailed report. Just a quick question regarding the charge increase on the early centres. Just from looking at the cabinet minutes from last month, I think it's 30% is going to be the rise on early school fees for the nurseries. Does that confirm that they're going to stay open, or does that mean the free early centres are going to be now closed? Because it's kind of, I couldn't quite work out between that. And the second question was, what level of inflation have we budgeted for this year, so that we know how next year might pan out?
So taking those in turn. So in terms of early year centres, so the assumptions within this draft budget are that the budgeted subsidy for the early year centres coming from general council tax will be removed in the new financial year. Now the way we can get to that is either through, if we weren't providing those services, clearly we wouldn't be putting a subsidy into them. The alternative is we're raising additional income through the fees and charges. So nothing in this budget kind of prejudges or kind of gets ahead of that process around the decisions around the future of the early years centres. All that we're saying in the budget is the expectation is that the outcome of that process will be that we move to a removal of the subsidy for those services. In terms of the inflation rate, so are you referring back to the 22-23 budget, so the year we're currently in? Yes. So yes, no, that's okay. So yeah, so in setting the budget for the current year, we pitched sort of inflation at a sort of prevailing rate of circa 5%. So the 10%, 11% that we're seeing at the moment is around double that inflation level. For the new financial year, we've pitched it somewhere in the region of 8%. So we're assuming we start to see a decline in inflation, but clearly not back to the historic levels.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Sweeting?
Can I come back to the thorny question about a capital scheme? There's nothing about the proposed new secondary school for the north of the borough. Is that now dead in the water?
So the council's capital programme will only include those schemes that we would be implementing. I think I'm right in saying, although we're happy if any education colleagues sort of jumped in if that's the way to put it. So I think I suppose the predisposition or the assumption from the Department for Education is that new schools that are being delivered would be delivered as free schools. So therefore the assumption for budgeting purposes is that the delivery of a new school in the north of the borough on that scale would be done via the free school route, and therefore it wouldn't score as our capital spend. So that's the only reason it's not in the budget. It's not a reflection on expected demand for school places, for which I know the work we've done behind sort of setting the budget does assume significant increases in capacity.
Can I have
Councillor Dott, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Sweeting.
My follow-up question is concerning the capital monies for Scout and Guide huts. Is there a reason, Detra, that funding is going to be for that facility, which is very worthy, but not to update our own youth centres?
So I don't think it's necessarily a binary choice in terms of where we would invest the capital. So all the capital schemes that are in there are based on sort of either policy commitments or the sort of investment appraisal around this is something we need to invest in. So within the capital programme as it stands, we've got a couple of lines in there which are in terms of the property works programme, which are around the cyclical investment in our existing stock, where we're going to continue to acquire it, if that's the way to put it, and use it in the ways we're using it. And really, so that's where I suppose the patching works, for want of a better word, to keep those existing assets in use. That's where they would land. I think if there were bids around investment in, sorry, I'll listen to my colleague as I say this. If there's where we do need to invest in new sort of capital provision, new assets. So as I said, the budget as it stands at the minute does have provision around investment in the new community hubs as a sort of standalone line in there. We've also got scope within there to support investment in increase on mobile provision in terms of the buses around sort of delivering that hub provision. So there's funding going in for council-run services as well as sort of third sector services.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dott.
Thank you, Chair. Coming back to the similar question, like you mentioned about the cost saving, about 20% reduction in the central schools budget. What factors taken into account to decide this cost saving is the
So we've so from our sort of existing kind of management of the Send Transport Service, we have an understanding of sort of the average unit cost for an outer borough transport for one child and in-borough transport for one child, and the saving that's included in the budget is effectively it's the differential between those two numbers, but on the basis that we are assuming to deliver X number of in-borough send places in the current year. So that's how we've sort of derived that difference. So it's based on our experience of what we're currently spending on in-borough routes versus out of borough routes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, great. Ian, thank you for coming this evening. We understand that there's a lot of pressure at the moment, increasing demands on children's services, all the rest of it, but we also recognise, I think, that the importance on early help and prevention as a measure to support our families and our young people. So thank you for joining us this evening. We've got comments that we need to submit to Cabinet. So perhaps what we'll do for that is to I'll delegate to Anisha in conjunction with myself and you, Councillor Sweeting, and we can take it offline and agree that. Okay. All right, Ian, thank you very much. Okay, we are going to move on to agenda item 6, which is the youth offer update. Anisha's just gone to set the video up, and then once she's done, Kat, over to you.
The Hillingdon Council Walking Football Community Project, and also I'm co-founder of Uxbridge Amblers Walking Football Club. I've been a lead coach organising sessions here at Hillingdon Sports and Leisure Centre on the 3G pitch for 7 years. So here every Wednesday morning and every Friday evening. Over the past probably 18 months, as we came out of COVID, we encountered a lot of issues here with large numbers of youths from the borough coming down and playing unorganised football, and also some vandalism was happening because there was no real control of the groups using the pitch. So I spoke with in the council and I said, look, we need to be proactive with the groups. They want to play football, the vast majority. Why not let's get them organised? So Terry and the team came down, and really from week one there was a sudden change. There was a change in not just organisation, but in attitude from the youths using the pitch. They became very respectful of the facility and respectful of those trying to help and support them, i.e. me, Terry and the team. And some months on now, as we're coming into autumn, we're getting still large numbers coming down on a Friday evening, or Friday afternoon actually, into early evening, using the facility, but now they're playing organised games, which most of them are organising themselves, which is great. There's youth from all over the borough joining in with each other and playing and having fun and making new friends, and that can only be a plus, a win-win for everybody.
We used to come down and play football. The workers always used to think that we was causing trouble. They used to always kick us off and not give us a chance to actually play football. But now that the mobile detached team has sort of helped out with that and sorted everything out, they've provided us an opportunity to come down on a Friday during the week and play football, doing things that we like. They've provided this space to socialise, like come down with our friends, do tasks and activities and stuff, watch a bit of football. So it's really helped out.
They're the ones that supervise us and look after us and keep everyone together, make sure everything stays in place, and make sure we all get like our fun in, and like no fight. They make sure like everything, like no violence, safety comes first, and like they just want everyone to have a good time, fun time.
Thank you, Chair. I've been asked to attend today to provide an update with regards to the youth services offer in Hillingdon, and I wanted to start with that short video that was created by our mobile and detached team at the end of last year. I really think that video captures how a responsive, modern and dynamic youth offer can really engage with children within our communities. And the video also demonstrated the voice of the child, but emphasises the importance of co-production. And I hope that within this report that has come out to you in terms of how we really want to work with our stakeholders, our organisations, and our young people around the development of our youth offer. In February 2022, the Universal Youth Service transitioned from Resident Services Directorate to the Children and Young People's Directorate, and that provides us with a timely opportunity to review the youth offer within Hillingdon. And I'm pleased to be able to share with you today our proposed youth vision for Hillingdon. I think it's important at this stage just to recognise that I'm here to talk about the youth offer, but actually when I'm talking about the youth offer, I'm talking about the all-encompassing youth offer. So there are elements that will be delivered through the local authority, whether that be through our universal or our targeted services, but it's also about thinking about how we work better with our uniformed groups, with our youth faith groups, with our sports groups, with our arts and culture groups as well. So we actually provide an overarching youth offer to our children and young people across Hillingdon. We want to support and enable our young people to achieve their potential, and we believe that we can do this by implementing the strategy. The youth offer will encompass a wide range of provisions to support young people across the borough and providing an open access youth work while also delivering targeted support for young people that need additional help including those that are on the cusp of statutory services. We know from the last few years and through COVID that the needs and methods of interaction with our children and young people have changed. We know that children ask of us a range of interventions, whether that be through face-to-face, group work, one-to-one, but also in terms of the digital environment to engage with them. Within the report, you will see that there was a survey conducted in 2021 that was sent out to all secondary schools across Hillingdon with around 600 responses from our children and young people. Equally, with our engagement with children and young people throughout our targeted and universal services, our children tell us that they want accessible services close to where they live, where they spend recreational time, and that also that they are culturally and contextually informed services that we're delivering. It's proposed that we realign the Adolescent Development Service, which is our targeted services to children, along with our Universal Youth offer, so that we provide a one front door for our children and young people, so they're not having to go through different front doors to access services, and that they can move dynamically between. We plan to propose to use a range of services to engage with our children and young people by using the detached and outreach delivery youth work model, building on the success of the transporter bus, which you saw within the video, so that we can engage with young people across the borough, where they live, learn and in their communities to meet their needs. This would be complemented by a buildings-based offer, utilising flexible assets in our communities, including some young people centres, schools, sports facilities, community centres and community hubs, all of which we already do. We want to engage with children and young people in their spaces. At the same time, the approach is based on relationship-based practice that is predicated on putting the young people at the centre of what we do and listening to them in co-producing services and solutions. We plan to use a network of different community spaces, providing a unique environment to deliver locality-based, accessible, community-led youth work. We're working closely with colleagues who are developing the community and family hubs to ensure that the needs of children accessing the youth offer are fully incorporated. We've already shown that the influence in terms of using a range of services, including libraries, leisure centres, and to deliver sports activities and arts. As I've referenced, now more than ever, the power of digital engagement with our children and young people. We're successfully delivering online counselling, substance misuse support, etc. to our children and young people. The youth offer is supposed to have a delivery model made up of a range of flexible provisions, including the locality-based, detached and street-based youth work, outreach youth work, which will enable youth workers to go from buildings-based out into the communities, engage with our children and young people and bring them back to the centres, outdoor learning, digital youth work and other activities such as residentials and social interaction. But we recognise, as I said at the start, that this shouldn't be done in isolation, and we're keen to ensure that we work with a wide range of partnership agencies, stakeholders and organisations so that we can maximise funding opportunities, for example, plan and deliver a coherent borough-wide youth offer. Equally, we plan to ensure that the use of robust data and analysis, including our joint strategic needs assessment and the index of multiple deprivation, to inform how resources are deployed and prioritise the delivery of services into neighbourhoods with the highest need. The proposed youth offer has been agreed in principle. However, it will be further informal review with a plan for it to go to Cabinet in the upcoming months. Once agreed, there will be a full public consultation with regard to the proposed youth offer. We've included some performance data there for you to see. You will note that the Universal Youth Service currently has 13 open access group work sessions. This is currently greatly restricted due to staffing resources. It is projected that with a new youth offer, this could be increased to up to 29 programmes a week. The Adolescent Development Service is currently offering 11 targeted group work sessions a week with up to 25 spaces and 212 one-to-one sessions across the week and across the borough. Our mobile and detached team with the transporter bus is delivering 6 sessions a week delivered in hotspots across the area. We deploy the bus to the areas where we identify that there is the highest need to engage with those children and young people who are the hardest to reach. Finally, I'd like to share with you the breadth of our summer programme from 2022 this year. So there was 2 weeks of targeted programme through our mobile and detached team in the key areas of West Drayton and Hayes, where a total of 224 young people were engaged. That work was complemented by the work of our Adolescent Development Service, who delivered a 5-day residential to Jamie's Farm for 10 children and offered 72 spaces on targeted programmes. Our Fiesta programme offered a total of 1,478 places over 45 programmes. The Holiday Activity Programme, HAF, offered 5,264 places over 26 programmes. The Holiday Activities HAF programme has been a huge success this year, not only in the summer but also in the Easter. Over the year we've delivered a series of arts-based programmes, and we've also delivered programmes to support children with SEND, including SEND Musical Theatre, SEND Summer Camp, and some of those with the more complex needs. We've also delivered specialist provision for asylum and refugee children, which was piloted in the summer. In the Easter, we've commissioned 6 providers and delivered across 2 weeks of holiday period. We offered 1,785 places, lasting a minimum of 4 hours a day, and we've just successfully delivered a 2-week Christmas programme.
Okay, thank you, Kat. I think that we welcome this update and the information on the vision for modernising the youth offer. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to start off with a couple of questions of my own, and then I'll go around the room. At the start of the report, you mentioned a comprehensive directory of opportunities. Is that an actual directory that will be published, and how and where will that be promoted and published, please?
Yes, so the vision is that actually we bring together a directory of opportunities for children and young people. So that will be a directory of everything from our uniform groups to our arts groups to our sports opportunities. That will also include the offer from the local authority. So actually that will be digitally available to our children and young people and our families. So actually they will be able to go on and see. We're also keen to explore the use of an app as well, which is already operating across London, where we can input the data regarding opportunities for children and young people, and they can put their postcode in, and it will bring up what's available exactly within their locality.
Okay, great. That sounds great. Also, my second question is about on page, I can't see the page number, 29, I want to say, of the report. It says digital youth work, accessing information, youth work, and targeted sessions, online opportunities. So under that bullet point, I was just querying youth work. Does that actually mean like work experience for our young people?
Youth work would mean actually delivering programs, for example, but equally as part of it is about supporting our children and young people to fully achieve. So if there are volunteer opportunities, then absolutely we'd be looking to explore that as well.
Great, thank you. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if I could start with just asking about the mobile delivery service and the locations. Now, as you answered it, saying the hotspots are in West Trent and Hayes, but only 6 of the 28 are in the north of the borough. Do we believe that's enough provision in the north of the borough of those? The next question is the involvement of uniform groups. I was very interested to see that 127 young people said they were involved in uniform groups, which anybody who's involved in a uniform group is almost certainly weekly, but only 84 said they were involved or wanted to be involved in a young people centre, and a lot of those then said that they weren't going to that weekly. It was something they popped into every now and again. So I guess my question is there something there to be doing more work with our uniform groups and getting them more and making sure that we are signposting young people who want to be involved in a uniform group to them, and whether that's happening. And because they're here, I may as well ask about the Youth Council and the work that the council is doing to help them to promote themselves in local schools and get more young people involved in democracy and involved in their local communities. Thank you very much, Kat, for those.
I'll take the questions in order. So with regards to the mobile and detached team, so the mobile and detached team is quite a discreet service. It really is about working with those children and young people who are the hardest to reach. We have a comprehensive exploitation software system that we have called Axis, which triangulates information regarding child criminal exploitation. So we take information from sources across police, health, education, social care. We triangulate that, and that enables us to identify the areas of greatest need, and we can do that in real time. So what that enables us to do is actually deploy the mobile detached bus into the area with the greatest need at the greatest time. So that can change on a weekly, monthly basis. So there are periods where we spend more time in the north of the borough and other times when we spend more time in the south or in between. So we try and make sure that we have a presence across the borough, but equally ensuring that we maximise that resource in the best way that we can. With regard to the uniformed group accessibility, absolutely. And I think I can confidently say to you that at the moment we don't have an overview of all of those groups that are operating in Hillingdon. So that's why when I talk about the youth offer, I talk about that all-encompassing youth offer, because we need to understand what's operating for our children and young people across Hillingdon, and how do we help them to access those groups that are operating. How do we facilitate those arrangements? So actually that is part of that comprehensive directory, and making sure that we have that accessibility and visibility for our children and young people. And that ties into your third question around the Youth Council, and we don't have enough visibility at present of our youth offer, whether that is our Youth Council, our programmes, etc. We need to increase our digital visibility. We need to make greater use of our social media. Children and young people use social media all the time. We need to improve our visibility on social media. We need to improve our visibility through our schools, and we need to improve our physical visibility as well. And that's when I reference about actually increasing our outreach youth work, for example, and actually going out and engaging in young people out and about where they are spending their recreational time, etc.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barr.
Thank you, Chair. I like the idea of all-encompassing youth offer, so I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. Just turning to page 20, if I may, it seems that we're clearly rich in our capital resources, but clearly an opportunity to make these resources better, and I'm particularly looking at young people centres and libraries. I guess the key word is revitalising and reassessing the way in which we advertise and market to young people, as you said, making it modern, cool enough for them to use. And perhaps, I don't know if we've thought about using apps like Nextdoor and social media, obviously, to gain traction. And perhaps, I don't know if there's been an engagement with an expert in social media within the council, if there is an expert, or if we can outsource that somehow, because there is a bit of a fine art to social media and gaining traction, which not everyone is familiar with. And I see people centres to be sort of a hub for learning, collaboration, arts, music, cultural activities. And I just feel that it could be set up more like a students' union body, almost like at university, where young people should be responsible for running it through a committee of their own, which can, of course, be supervised, and work hand in hand with council on key decision making and funding allocation, and work hand in hand with voluntary organisations, for example, and sort of allow this sort of almost this one body to form sort of smaller societies which can be established. So a society for rock climbing or for sports, which makes it easier because it's all in one place. It makes it easier for young people to know where to go to access resources, and also, if, for example, you could include the youth council as well as part of that, and if it's all under one social media banner, then it's a bit more easier to sort of assimilate. And I'm just wondering if that's all been thought about, and if I guess the next step is to put some detail on how we can achieve this.
Thank you, Councillor. Certainly we've been in dialogue with our colleagues in corporate communications, and I think there's an acknowledgement that actually in terms of how we're engaging with our young residents, we need to improve on that, and that's still work in progress. There are apps that are widely used across London. I think Local Village is another one that is widely utilised, that you can actually physically update yourselves rather than relying on somebody else to do it as well. So I think there are ample opportunities, and then it is about how we make our young residents aware that they exist. Equally, we've got to keep it live and keep it up to date, but how equally do we use instant messaging, for example, to push out new ideas, new opportunities to our children and young people across the borough, also using the platforms through schools, for example, to get those messages out there. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, and thank you for the detailed report. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into delivering this. There's a couple of issues. At the end of the report, it asks for any recommendations from this committee. And I think what I would say is the proof of the pudding on this direction of travel is in the eating. And it will only be when young people have eaten this that we will know whether it's fit for purpose or not. So is it possible that we could recommend, once it's gone through the stages of going through the Cabinet and it's been up and running for some time, that we could look at this to see if it's working, and maybe even a mini review on this service, because I do think bringing together all of these disparate areas is a good look, but there are concerns, I think, that some of the hardest to reach youngsters might still be very hard to reach. And so the more that we look at what we're doing and whether it's fit for purpose, I think is an important role that we as a committee should be undertaking.
So, Councillor Sweeting, sorry, I was just going to come in there and just say that I think, to my understanding, it is going to come back to committee for scrutiny.
Right.
So we can have an opportunity then.
Thank you. And a piece of information I've only just received, and that is that we look as if some of our youth centres are already closed. I just heard from this evening that Fountains Mill closed before Christmas, that Charville is closed, that the only ones that are now open are the 2 Ruislips and Harlington. Now, question 13 on this consultation that was only responded to about 500 youngsters gives the impression that these centres are not the way forward. Now, centres for guides and clubs is the right way forward, so it concerns me that we may well be slamming the door on centres that are going to allow us to develop a very good youth offer. So can you confirm whether this information I've only just received, and that is we're only dealing with 2 youth centres in Ruislip and 1 in Harlington from now on?
So I can confirm no youth centres have been closed. There are some structural concerns regarding some of the youth centres, so Northwood, for example. There are some structural concerns regarding that building. There has been some challenges regarding the staffing of some of the youth centres. The Universal Youth Service staff and resources has been significantly depleted for some time. As a result, all of the youth centres were closed throughout the period of COVID, and some haven't been able to fully reopen since. In relation to Charville, that's one of those youth centres. However, we have HACS operating out of Charville at the moment, offering a service to children and young people. With regards to Fountains Mill is an 18th century mill. There have been a number of significant health and safety concerns over the last few months, which have involved potential injuries to staff and service users. So whilst the wider asset transformation programme is undertaken, the decision has been made to utilise alternative venues for the time being. But I can confirm at the moment there is no decision no centres are closed permanently.
Okay,
that's a relief.
Okay, Miss Little.
Thank you, Chairman. and I welcome this report and found the survey particularly interesting. 2 questions, or one really an emphasis on issues that have been raised elsewhere, and that is, coming from the survey, there seems to be a very high proportion of young people who aren't aware of what is being done, and that seems to call for quite a strong marketing campaign. And although you've talked about things like directories, I think it'll need much more of a push than that to get the benefit of the work that you're trying to do. And my second one relates to the awareness of other partners in the area and working with those partners. Will there be formal governance arrangements incorporating these other partners in continuous assessment of the service? And is there going to be an effort made to network with the most likely sources of these other organisations, i.e. the churches for the uniform groups and so on? And presumably you were saying that you're not altogether aware of all of them, but that's a case of going out and exploring, isn't it, to find?
Thank you. Yes, with regards to the marketing campaign, absolutely, because we know our children don't know what's out there. And actually we know that often those children who may be already accessing, for example, uniformed groups are potentially those that have the social network around them to have sought those out and found them, and actually we need to be supporting those children who don't necessarily have that support social network to do that. With regards to the formal involvement, once this vision is formally agreed and actually the consultation is completed, that will then link into the development of a 5-year strategy, and actually as part of that 5-year strategy it will formulate how we engage on a continuous basis with those stakeholders who are also delivering services to our children and young people, because and the point that was raised earlier around we need to continually evaluate and review how we are delivering these services, because children's needs change, our communities change, so we need to keep live with that.
Thank you. Councillor Dopp.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe a silly question, just for my own understanding. When we talk about open access group sessions, what is involved in there, and what kind of support being provided to the youngsters?
Certainly, so that's similar to what we're offering some of now. So that's about saying we will have a centre open between 7 and 9 p.m. for a certain age group of children and people, and that will provide a range of opportunities, whether that is through building social skills around cooking, personal interaction skills, around exploring opportunities to access some of our other programmes, such as Duke of Edinburgh, for example. So it really is almost that drop-in. There is no kind of set structure to it. It's inviting young people to come in and access a range of services at any one time, whereas we have those set programmes which will actually deliver, for example, our Duke of Edinburgh our programme, for example, or some of our targeted programmes where it's quite prescriptive about what that session will be about.
Thank you. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you. What I read into this was that young people centres aren't necessarily the golden bullet that's going to solve everything, and actually the collaboration of the various groups that we have already doing the fantastic work that needs to be emphasised is ever so important. And if any statistic showed that, it's in question 14 where 170 young people weren't doing the Duke of Edinburgh but they would like to. So the appetite is there. And I just think it's really important that we recognise that some of this work is already going on. And if it wasn't for scouting, I wouldn't be sat here today. So I'm somebody that is a testament of that. Could we in a future survey look at sports clubs? So whether it be football teams. In my ward, Ruislip Rangers are servicing over 1,000 young people, including disabled young people. They've got one of the biggest women's football teams going. I've got Ruislip Cricket Club and various others in my ward. So there is a lot of that going on. It'd be really interesting to see how many young people are doing that, because there are thousands of young people taking part in those things. So it'd be interesting potentially next year to get those into the survey and make sure that they are involved in any collaborative working that we do in the future.
Absolutely, thank you. And I think I take the sentiment that we shouldn't be replicating, and I think that's why we need to ensure we know what already is happening across our borough before we start trying to fill gaps that actually we don't need to be filling, so that we're targeting our resources in the most effective way.
Thank you. Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one regarding the survey. Was it conducted at schools across the borough, or was it selective schools, or some schools that they cooperate with the survey themselves? And the second question was to do with what Mr. Little mentioned about the marketing side of it. I was wondering, was there any liaison with sort of pastoral teams in schools to target those most vulnerable to come onto these services? Because I think those teams can really target the kids that might go under the radar and who it might benefit the most. Thank you.
So in response to the survey, I understand the survey was distributed to all secondary schools in the borough, and it was encouraged that actually it was disseminated to all children in all secondary schools across Hillingdon. With regards to the use of pastoral schools, absolutely, we engage fully with the schools at the moment in terms of the offer that's available, and we've seen that really improve the inclusivity through our targeted programmes, for example. But actually we're limited in terms of what we can offer in terms of that universal at the moment because of the restrictions around the staffing resources. So absolutely we want to build on those platforms when they're there, and if the vision is agreed, to actually say here is a much wider offer and how we're accessing, both through our schools, through our children's centres, really reaching out to our community groups as well. So there is that visibility about what's on offer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Batt.
Thank you. Just looking at the usefulness of this data, I know that the data was gathered primarily to kind of understand what young people perhaps want. But what I've kind of looked at it in a different way, kind of identifying some sort of societal problems as well. Because if you look at question 6, for example, 318 people spend most of the time listening to music. We've got 148 which prefer sleeping, and then only 25 based on interested in community-based activities, which is concerning for me personally. And I feel that perhaps this data can be used to help set your objectives based on those kind of different interpretation of the data.
Certainly, and I think it's relatively recent data, but we acknowledge that actually children's needs are changing actually month to month, year on year. So we want to keep that live dialogue going with children and young people. But actually, absolutely, we should be using this information to shape our service delivery and inform the programmes that are on offer.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Sweeting. Thanks.
Thank you. One comment is that our youth centres do deliver the Duke of Edinburgh Awards. Fountains Mill does that. The transporter bus is a singular transporter bus, but there was a second that was trundling from an agreement by the council some years ago. Is that still trundling? Will we have a second transporter bus, please?
So within the wider proposal, and in order to support the delivery of a detached model of youth work, there is a recommendation for a second bus that can be utilised, and that actually while we have the niche transporter bus which really goes into these hotspot areas, that the second bus could be used more widely across services, whether that is delivering, for example, direct youth work into a particular housing estate or area, but actually utilised for our colleagues in health or education during the days, for example. So we've had success during COVID with the transporter bus being used to support COVID vaccinations. So we actually want to make sure that it's a community-based resource as well, and that actually we maximise its use all throughout the day and the week.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ahmed Rolana.
Thank you, Chairman. Catherine, thank you for your presentation, and I do welcome the report as well, as we all recognize the importance of the engagement with young people. In the report and in your presentation as well, you talked about multiple range of services, including the cultural services. Would you like to elaborate on specifically on the cultural services, please?
So I think we need to recognise we have very diverse communities across Hillingdon, and that actually we need to ensure that we're tailoring our programmes to individual, to communities' cultural needs, and that's about how we adapt and change in order to best engage. So whether that is about having a diverse workforce, but also having some cultural awareness about communities that we're engaging with, and that's when I talk about being contextually and culturally aware, so that actually we don't go in with a one-size-fits-all model, and that actually the method of engagement with a community in one area may need to be slightly different to a good engagement with a community in a different area. But equally, we need to be engaging with our community and understand actually from them the best way to engage with their children and young people.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, if there's no further questions or comments, we can bring this item to a close. Kat, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It sounds like there's lots going on behind the scenes, so we look forward to receiving further updates in due course, but thank you very much. Okay, agenda item 7 then, which is the proposed changes to admissions criteria and PAN number to a primary community school. So I'm going to hand over to Jenny. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. We are proposing to reduce the PAN, which is the published admissions number, for a primary community school, Coatford Infant, from 81 to 60 to come into effect from reception 24, which will also reduce our priority distance radius from 1,000 metres to 750 metres, which is in line with our admissions arrangements. I've included the Cabinet report, which was presented on the 13th of October, with a review to go out to consultation, which we did from the 24th of October to the 19th of December, to which we received 2 responses, which are also included in the report. The reason, obviously, for this reduction is based on reviewing pupils on roll and projections demographic changes leading to depleting pupil roles on reception intakes. We will be presenting the consultation responses to Cabinet in February in regards to those changes. So, yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you. The issue of this particular planning area 3, we have a school now, Coatford, with reducing their PAN, but only very recently we had another school in that planning area that's capacity was increased by 100%. So is there a challenge that the council has possibly overlooked of these schools that are reducing? There's quite a few now, where at the same time we have increased the capacity in schools in the same area. And this has not only happened here, it's happened in planning area 5 as well.
So the schools in planning area 3, so we have Whiteheath Infant and Nursery School. I think you're referring to BWI, are you, in regards to the Warrender to 60, which is so that was increased from 30 to 60. Again, that was based on the demand for that particular school. In regards to Coatford, it's been at the PAN is 81. Generally, it's 90. It's always been a strange number, 81. Yeah, for a reason. And however, based on previous years and intakes and reduction of intakes for reception, so the current reception is at 59, so to a maximum of 81. And Coatford are currently operating on that reduced PAN. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Little.
It's more a comment than anything specific on Coatford, and that is the council very wisely has informal as well as formal consultations in this process, and involves the schools and the governors. But the report that we get at this stage only takes in the formal consultation. It would be, I think, helpful for the committee and on other occasions if more detail was given on the informal consultation and the reactions that were incorporated as a result of the informal consultation.
Okay, thank you. So the informal from the school discussions and the governors, yeah, certainly I will note that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? No? Okay, fine. So I think also for this agenda item we do need to submit comments to Cabinet. So again, I'll delegate authority to Anisha and myself and Councillor Sweeting for that. Jenny, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'm sorry you had to kind of sit there for a very short presentation, but thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, so agenda item 8 is the corporate parenting panel minutes. The one thing I have on the minutes is just I noticed that my name, it says I'm a co-chair of this panel. Obviously I'm not co-chair of that one, so we just need to edit it. Any other comments for the minutes? Oh, Ms. Little.
It's a question that may or may not be easy to answer. At the top of page 58, it mentions the virtual schools links with Brunel University and the sessions and the trip to Oxford. And what I was wondering was, with our looked after children, what happens in the way of provision for those children if they're fortunate enough to go to university in terms of maintenance and such like? Because presumably they, almost by definition, haven't got parents who are going to subsidise them in addition to their student loans. Does the council make any extra provision for them at this stage?
To be honest, I wouldn't know the answer for that one, but we can take that away, and certainly at corporate parenting panel we can ask the question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, moving on then to agenda item 9, which is the forward plan. Any comments? No. Agenda item 10 is the work programme. So just on the work programme, just to remind members that we have our witness session on the 18th of January, which is the voice of the parents and the voice of the young people. So, Councillor Sweeting.
Do we have the timings for those?
Yeah, I believe Anisha, you submit to send down the timings?
I can certainly share them with you, Councillor.
Thank you very much, because I've got a meeting in the evening, Safer Neighbourhood team meeting in the evening, so if it's an evening one, there's a clash.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Any other comments on the work programme? No, okay, great. Okay, so that brings this first half of our meeting to a close. We are going to receive the Ofsted report as a part 2 item. So what I would ask is, first of all, to say thank you to our young people for joining us from the Hillingdon Youth Council, and to any of our other members, if you can please leave the meeting, and for our members of the committee, we will continue the discussion after the recording's finished. Thank you very much.